Spoilers for Mobile Suit Genesis Lelouch of the Frogs. I don't know if anyone else has experienced a similar problem, but I've learned through time that I am a sucker for good video games. I'm a sucker for games that make me go, mwah! Whether it be an incredible combat system, detailed and beautiful environments, fantastic progression and customization, or a shockingly good story, games that can focus in and kill it in one or two of these regards are generally the best of the best. You know what else I'm kind of a sucker for? Anime. Mecha anime. Now, before you call the cops on me, I don't use Reddit that much, or watch shit like Boku no Pico, or whatever the fuck this is, Gurren Lagann, Mobile Suit Gundam, Darling in the Franxx, Code Geass, and, of course, Evangelion. Mecha isn't my favorite genre by any means, but it's definitely up there. So imagine a game that not only has all the shit I talked about a second ago, but it also uses those things in the context of mecha. What would that game look like? What would a game like that, if put in the hands of genuinely great developers, feel like?
619 and 620. Dead? Which ones did I kill, I wonder?
Armored Core 6 is God's gift to video games, and while you might expect me to say that it blows my mind how this game wasn't nominated for Game of the Year, it doesn't, for reasons I'll get into later. However, I suppose before I get into the weeds with this one, I should say that I'm not really a fan of the original Armored Core games, because I only played 2 of them, For Answer and Last Raven. Not to say I didn't like them, because I remember having lots of fun with both games, especially For Answer, but I just want to emphasize that I don't have the Dorito-eating, soda-drinking, haven't seen the sun in years gamer gunk-looking credentials that some people do when it comes to Armored Core. However, anyone who played those older games can probably attest to the fact that Armored Core 6 is a pretty big diversion from previous games in the series. I think most, if not all, of these changes are for the better, and the changes aren't so severe it doesn't play like an Armored Core game at all, thankfully. No. It is not Armored Souls. The only Dark Souls game you can fly is the modded offline version. And the only Souls game with guns in it is Bloodborne, except they don't work because your enemies in that game are British. No, Armored Core 6 isn't a Souls-like, nor is it quite the same as the other Armored Core games. It's the same fundamental Armored Core through a whole new lens.
But are you a different animal and the same beast?
What the f does that mean, Kobe Bryant?
You're welcome.
Now, before I get into sucking more mech dick than 02, I'll get a couple of things out of the way, and by things I just mean complaints. One is the customization. I will praise the Mech Garage for the most part in this video, but I will say there are way fewer options than the older AC games I played in just about every department. It doesn't detract from the overall experience in any real way, and I know that more doesn't always equal better, but it is a change I do think of as a negative to some extent. The second complaint is the balance, which I have a bit more of an issue with. Now, I get that perfect balance in a game with this many fucking weapons is pure fantasy. Any game that allows its players this kind of freedom is bound to have standout builds and weapons. However, this game has a weapon known as the Zimmerman, specifically Double Zimmerman, or as I like to lovingly call them, Harry Truman's twin fucking sons. If there is something in front of you, whether it be a drone, walker, enemy AC, or even a whole-ass boss, all you gotta do is pull the triggers on your double Zimmermans, and that thing won't be in front of you anymore. And if it doesn't quite kill them in one shot, don't worry, you won't run out. Not that it's the only good build by any means, but it stands head and shoulders above every other option in the game. Armored Core 6 is a video game. And it's one of my top 10 games. This is the list of every game that managed to rise above the rest in my eyes, and I give it the greatest seal of approval I can possibly bestow. This game will make you come in 30 seconds. To start off, Armored Core 6 has fantastic combat, one of the greatest combat systems in gaming. I'd argue it actually has the second best combat system in gaming, behind Sekiro. And it just so happens that the lead game director for Armored Core 6 was also the combat designer for Sekiro. I know we all love Miyazaki and all, but damn, Masaru Yamamura has got this shit on lock. When talking combat, the gameplay loop you'll be engaging in largely depends on what type of enemy you're fighting and the build you're currently using. In terms of enemies, you got tiny ones that just about anything will clear out in one shot. You got less tiny ones that take a bit more to take down, you got some fly boys, you got some tough ones like the walkers that require dad's belt to take down, you got enemy ACs, And of course, you've got the bosses, who vary greatly in both difficulty and quality. Generally speaking, aside from double Zims, AC6 isn't the kind of game where you make one build that's your favorite playstyle and only run that for the entire game. I mean, I'm sure you probably could if you tried, but why the fuck would you? Look at all of these parts, so lonely and looking for love. Are you gonna hang them out to dry? Be a one build guy? Never look them in the eye? Of course you fucking aren't. You want plasma missiles? Fucking take them. You want lightning blades? Fucking take them. You want the might of every god conceived by mankind? Who's stopping you? Go for it. Well, actually, there is one thing stopping you, which is the fact that not every part will be available to you from the start of the game. I'm getting gameplay on New Game Plus, so this isn't exactly reflected here, but you need to slowly unlock more and more parts in the shop as you progress through the game's many missions. You also earn credits for doing missions, which are needed to buy parts from said shop. I think overall the rate at which you earn the parts is all fine and good, and you can always sell the parts back for the full price you paid for, so you don't really lose anything when you try something new. And that's one of Armored Core 6's biggest strengths. The fact that it doesn't punish you for experimenting, as it very well shouldn't. You can throw a slapstick build together, take it into a sortie or the arena, get your ass handed to you because you suck at making builds, then get out and reflect on all your life's decisions without consequence. And learning how to make a decent build is a good time in its own right. I like stats. I like stat maxing. I like games that let you fuck with numbers and try to break them. It was one of the best parts of Elden Ring for me. And I just go in here, oh okay, I can work with this. Max these bars out. Wait, what's that? Oh, the stats, baby. And don't even get me started on the cosmetics you can give your AC. Good fucking god, man. I paint Warhammer. I could spend days doing just this. In terms of the combat itself, you have 4 slots, each of which you will outfit with a different device. It could be a weapon like a gun or a blade, it could be a shield, it could be a missile launcher, it could be the Dahmer Demolisher, whatever tickles thy facne. Facne. What? Facne. Thy... Facne. There are so many ways to eviscerate bitches in this game, it's unreal. Personally, I'm a bit of a basic bitch, but I like dual trigger builds, where you basically switch between 2 sets of matching weapons. My personal favorite is this one, mostly because I like to be as fast as possible, but I've got other ACs as well. A long-range shock build, sustained flight with hard-hitting energy weapons, and of course the Zimmerman's, which also happens to be a great double trigger build. Oh my double trigger. There's a lot of shit for you to manage well in combat, but you get used to it pretty quick, especially if you're willing to experiment a bit. You do have repair kits in this game, which gives you more opportunities to make mistakes, and if you feel like you need more health, just swap parts. There are also expansion cores you can install on your AC, which grant you abilities like assault shields or even a safety to prevent you from dying. You might notice I got a couple of ACs saved and ready to go. That's because a lot of missions are much more well suited to certain builds, so I'd recommend having at least 3 distinct ACs ready to load at all times once it's feasible. That way you don't need to go and put the build back together piece by piece every time. Speaking of peace, there will be none. Not on my watch. Armored Core 6 has, in fact, got a story, and it is shockingly good. Unlike most of FromSoft's recent games, AC6 functions on a mission system. It's the type of game you jump into a mission from your garage, finish it, and then go back to prepare for the next one. You play as 621, a faceless, presumably extremely disfigured from augmentation, mercenary, doing jobs at the whim of your handler, a faceless man named Walter. As a matter of fact, all the characters you interact with throughout the story are faceless. You never actually get to see any of them, so the game relies on mission briefings and in-game dialogue to flesh out their personalities. And this is totally subjective, but I think they did a fantastic job. Carlo, Walter, Rusty, and Ire are the real standout characters that come to mind, but all the voices are memorable in their own way. And let's not forget my boy Sundowner, G1 Michigan. The story of Armored Core 6 is a story of, militaristic big business. I love America. The long and short of it is that Rubicon, the planet where the game takes place, is home to a fuel source called coral, which is supposedly an extremely valuable and rare resource that all of humanity is pining for. Before the game started, the coral was supposedly ignited, which more or less destroyed everything and made Rubicon temporarily uninhabitable. Now, years later, Raytheon is fucking back, boys, and the Corpos are done fucking around. A planet-wide struggle for control of the coral has broken out between 3 main factions. 2 major companies called Arquebus and Balaam, plus the Rubicon Liberation Front, whose efforts are focused on protecting Rubicon and the coral from the hairy, plasma-infused hands of capitalism. And then there's you, 621, essentially doing the dirty work of whoever will pay you. This means you can find yourself helping one of the factions clear out an area to make way for more of their forces, only to turn on them and demolish a base of theirs in the very next mission. You'll meet different bosses and enemy ACs along the way, and you'll be faced many times over with the reality of your position. I'm not going to go over every single mission, but you fight a couple of bosses early on, namely the Strider and the Juggernaut. The Strider is probably the best example of how this game uses its scale to its advantage, even though the fight itself isn't very interesting. Just destroying a few generators and then mag dumping a stationary target. The Juggernaut, on the other hand, is the boss that awaits you once you climb the infamous wall, and it's a bit more active. You get to do part of this fight with your homie, V4 Rusty, who is a pretty strong, reoccurring character. While all of this is happening, 621's reputation as a mercenary is steadily growing, with briefings detailing how all the warring sides want you to fight for their cause. Eventually, you're sent to take down a watch point, which results in you being hit with a coral explosion, and as a result, you now have Ire, who is a voice in your head, and probably the first woman you've ever interacted with. She helps you defeat Balteus, and is a voice in your ear for the rest of the game. As you go through more missions, you learn that Ire is essentially the coral, or at least a part of it. She even leads you on missions without Walter's supervision, and Walter himself is someone you also get to learn more about. He seems like a cold, uninterested supervisor at first, but as the story progresses, you get to learn about the real reason he came to Rubicon in the first place, and he turns out to be a much deeper character than he first appears. I'm not going to go through the entire game play by play, but I can at least talk about some of the highlights. As far as bosses go, I think this lineup is pretty solid. I enjoyed fighting just about every boss the game threw at me, with the exception of Go-Go Gadget's Satellite Shooter. This is the boss where you try not to get hit, like every other boss fight, except that is the entire fight. The only skill this tests is your patience, but other than that, the bosses are good for the most part. It's an easy thing to overlook when playing this game, but the areas you fight in are also, in my opinion, very pretty. The vast deserts, the snowy wastes, and the scorched skyline, or even, near automata, the areas of this game are really visually striking. It's kind of subtle, but I think it's worth calling out. Once you reach near automata, you get to fight this motherfucker. This is Armored Core's version of the Melania fight, and goddammit, it will kick your teeth in just like her. However, I must point out that even with double Zimmermans, Cell 240 is more than capable of pistol whipping your ass if you aren't careful. But with enough patience and persistence...
Can't take much more of this.
2 repair kits remaining.
This game slaps harder than Chris Brown. I fucking love it. After this, long story short, you get captured and saved by Carla, a friend of Walter's. Walter disappears at this point and is presumed dead, so you work for Carla now. Carla and Walter share the same goal, as is revealed to you over the last few missions of the game. They want to make the coral ignite again like it did years ago, which I think implies the coral is flammable? I mean, it makes sense, it's a fuel source. Regardless, Ire is, understandably, strongly against the destruction of Rubicon and presumably the eradication of her entire species, so she urges you to stop the burning. There are multiple endings to this game, and listening to Ire or obeying the will of Walter and Carla is how you choose in your first 2 playthroughs. If you stick with Walter and Carla, the final fight is against Ire, and Rubicon is successfully burned away. This ending is fine, and there's also an ending you can only get on your 3rd playthrough, which involves an artificial intelligence's plan to integrate humanity with the coral, but my favorite ending by far is the main ending, quote-unquote, Liberator of Rubicon. In this ending, you listen to Ire and decide to stop the plan to burn away all the coral. With the help of your homie, V4 Rusty, who at this point in the game is an absolute G in a Gundam suit, you take down the ship that was bound to ignite the coral. And as the ship falls, you get what is by far my favorite fight in the game.
621. I have to dispose of you.
Walter doesn't fuck around. You get to zoom around each other at the speed of sound as the ship plummets into the atmosphere. His mind is clearly gone from whatever his captors did to him, but he maintains enough composure to speak to you, and his dialogue in this fight is really what made me like his character. Not to mention this fucking music.
And our job will be over. You earned all of the credits. Until the surgery be normal again. Look at you, 621.
In addition to the main story contained in the campaign missions, you also have the arena. The arena is essentially a gauntlet of fights against increasingly difficult ACs. You get to fight plenty of characters from the campaign, including Carla, Michigan, and even your boy Rusty. It doesn't really tie into the main game at all, it's just a nice side mode that allows you to test yourself against other ACs and gauge your skills. There's also the option to go back and replay missions for credits, and there's even a combat rating system, so if trying to S-rank all the missions and play each one as optimally as possible sounds like a fun challenge, go for it. There's also training programs you can participate in. Most of the training is really basic, but at the very least you are rewarded with parts for doing it, so there is some incentive. There's a lot of shit to get done while going through the game, but it all manages to feel so diverse and interesting without feeling overwhelming, which is a feat I have to give props to. Why is this game not more recognized? Not that no one has talked about the game at all, but the fact that it wasn't even nominated for Game of the Year seems kinda crazy. However, it honestly isn't, for two reasons. One is simple. Armored Core is considered a niche series. People think Armored Core is a very specific type of game for a very specific type of player. Small scope, small audience, small impact, it just makes sense. And maybe for the older games, yeah, that kind of makes sense. But I don't think Armored Core 6 specifically should be niche, because I feel like anyone could enjoy this game. There is a shitload of customization, tons of gameplay variety, short missions, plenty of side content, and a great story. I really don't think Armored Core 6 should be a niche game, and I feel like there's just a lot of people who, for one reason or another, aren't willing to give the game a chance. The second reason is something I've just kind of noticed myself, and I could be way off on this because it's from my personal experience, but there seems to be a really strange aversion to the mecha genre in the West. Like I said, this is entirely from personal experience, but I've tried to get so many people and just friends, acquaintances of mine into mecha anime like Code Geass or Gundam, and they refuse by saying they don't like mecha, despite never having watched a mecha anime in their lives. And in the case of Armored Core, I ran into the same problem. People would just say they don't like mecha games, even though they have never played a mecha game before, like, ever. Like I said, this could be off the mark, and even if it isn't, I don't think this is the biggest reason Armored Core 6 wasn't nominated, but it's something I've noticed and I feel like I should mention. And if you are one of those people, first of all, hey, what's up? And second of all, play this damn game. Most of my videos aren't really reviews of games. If I'm being honest, most of these videos aren't even really about the games. They're either about the ideas the games represent, like in the case of BioShock, or the questions the game can provoke, like with Red Dead 2. I don't do game reviews, partially because I'm not really qualified, and partially because I take pride in what I make, and I want my videos to be more than that. But this video is, simply, without a shadow of a doubt, a PSA on why you should play Armored Core 6. It is nothing more than me telling you to throw your hard-earned cash at a game I really love. It's me hoping more people get to experience a game that was, for me, unquestionably Game of the Year. Yes, I played Baldur's Gate 3, and yes, I did love it, but goddamn this combat, goddamn this story, goddamn this music? Wait, this didn't win music either? What the fuck? I simply want to show this game off to people who might not know about it, or to the people who know about it but didn't try it out, because you are treating yourself unfairly by refusing to play this game. The dick I'm sucking may not be presidential, like Marilyn Monroe, but it is undoubtedly corporate, like Todd Howard. I hold this game up with the likes of Sekiro, Bloodborne, BioShock, Outer Wilds, Halo, Nier Replicant, Final Fantasy VII, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and Metal Gear Rising. Yes, Metal Gear Rising is unironically in my top 10 games of all time. It's what my next video is about. Go fuck yourself, Saucy Jack. I love Armored Core 6, and I think if more people try it, they will too. Like excessive drinking. So roll out your AC. And thank you for watching.